Have you ever heard of the ghost story about the Bloody Mary? When you say the phrase Bloody Mary in front of the mirror 13 times, her apparition will appear and claw at her victim. But what many don't know is that the Bloody Mary refers to a person of great importance in history, not just some vengeful ghost that you see in the mirror when called. What is the real story behind the name Bloody Mary? Hi, welcome to our channel. As we continue our series on controversial women in history, we're going to talk about one woman who has indeed had a great deal of controversy in her life since she was a child. Her name is Mary I of England, and let's find out why she ended up being referred to as Bloody Mary. Before we begin, let's hear your thoughts first about Mary I of England. Why do you think she was called Bloody Mary? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Mary I, alternatively known as Mary Tudor, and famously referred to as Bloody Mary, was born on February 18, 1516, in Greenwich, located near London, England. Prior to Mary I, there had been previous English queens who held their position as spouses of the reigning king. However, Mary marked a significant deviation as she became the first queen regnant, signifying a queen who governed a nation as the primary monarch rather than solely as a consort. As the offspring of King Henry VIII and the Spanish Princess Catherine of Aragon, Mary was used as a political bargaining chip during England's intense competition with more influential nations. She was repeatedly suggested as a potential spouse to various powerful leaders, sought after as potential allies, yet these proposals often ended without successful alliances being formed. In one example, for instance, on October 5, 1518, when she was just 2 years old, Mary participated in a betrothal ceremony at Greenwich with François III, the Dauphin of France, who was also 2 years old at the time. The Lord Admiral of France stood in as the Dauphin's representative, placing a diamond ring on Mary's finger. It is recounted that Mary inquired, "Are you the Dauphin of France? If you are, I wish to kiss you." 2 days later, the festivities at Greenwich included jousting, a grand procession in the hall, and a banquet featuring 260 dishes. However, much like several of Mary's other engagements, this betrothal was of short duration and was cancelled 3 years later in 1521. Finally, Mary was promised to her cousin Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor. He told her to come to Spain with a lot of money as her dowry, but when she couldn't meet this demand, he broke off the engagement and found a more advantageous match. In 1525, her father, King Henry, named her the Princess of Wales, even though there's no official record of her actually receiving this title. She held court at Ludlow Castle while they tried to arrange a new engagement for her. However, her life took a big turn when her father, Henry, married Anne Boleyn. As far back as the 1520s, Henry had been planning to divorce his first wife, Catherine, so he could marry Anne. He argued that marrying Catherine, who had been married to his deceased brother, was wrong and incestuous. The Pope refused to agree to this divorce, even after Henry made it legal in England. In 1534, Henry decided to break away from the Pope and created the Church of England. This move basically declared Mary illegitimate. Anne, the new queen, had a daughter named Elizabeth, who would later become queen, and she didn't let Mary see her parents. Anne took away Mary's title of princess and made her work as a lady-in-waiting for baby Elizabeth. Mary never saw her mother again, but they secretly wrote letters to each other, even though it was very risky. After Anne Boleyn fell out of favor with Henry, he told Mary that he would forgive her if she acknowledged him as the head of the Church of England and admitted that his marriage to her mother was wrong. At first, she refused, but then her cousin Charles, the Emperor, convinced her to agree. She later regretted this decision deeply. Now that Mary had agreed, Henry was on good terms with her again. He gave her a proper household for someone of her rank and started making plans for her to get married. She became the godmother to Prince Edward, who was Henry's son, with Jane Seymour, his third wife. Mary was now one of the most important princesses in Europe. Even though she wasn't considered very attractive, people liked her because she had a beautiful singing voice and was good with languages. However, she couldn't shake off the label of being born out of wedlock, and she had a lot of restrictions on what she could do. Many potential husbands were suggested for her, but none of these marriages ever happened. When Henry married Catherine Howard, Mary was allowed to return to the royal court. In 1544, even though she was still seen as illegitimate, she was given the right to inherit the throne after Edward and any other legitimate children that Henry might have. Mary was indeed surrounded by a lot of controversy at a young age. What are your thoughts about her so far? Comment on them down below. In 1547, Edward VI took over as king after his father, and he was strongly influenced by intense religious beliefs and overly enthusiastic advisors. He insisted that church services be conducted in English instead of Latin. Nevertheless, Mary persisted in conducting traditional Mass in her private chapel, putting herself at risk of facing execution once more. When Edward passed away in 1553, Mary went to Norfolk because Lady Jane Grey had taken the throne and was briefly considered queen. In an ideal scenario, Mary, being Edward's half-sister, would have been the rightful successor. However, there was a significant problem. Mary was a devout Catholic, in contrast to the Protestant beliefs of King Edward. Her ascent to the throne would have slowed down the progress of the English Reformation considerably. To circumvent this issue, Edward suggested his cousin, Lady Jane Grey, as his successor, aiming to prevent Mary from becoming queen. But the majority of the country believed that Mary was the rightful queen, and in a matter of days, she received a triumphant welcome in London. At 37 years old, she possessed a strong and straightforward personality, similar to her father. However, unlike him, she didn't like harsh punishments or signing death warrants. Mary didn't pay attention to the need for caution as a newly crowned queen, struggled to adapt to new circumstances, and wasn't driven by personal gain. She was determined to return her people to the Roman Catholic Church. To achieve this, she wanted to marry Philip II of Spain, who was 11 years younger and the son of Emperor Charles V, even though most of her advisors recommended marrying her cousin, Courtenay, the Earl of Devon, who had royal lineage. In 1554, when it became evident that she would marry Philip, a Protestant rebellion erupted under the leadership of Sir Thomas Wyatt. Concerned by Wyatt's swift approach towards London, Mary delivered an inspiring speech that rallied thousands of citizens to support her cause. Wyatt was defeated, put to death, and Mary married Philip. She reinstated the Catholic faith and reintroduced strict laws against heresy. Mary I was raised in the Catholic faith, but her father's decision to transition the Church from Catholicism to Protestantism, primarily to end his marriage to her mother, understandably made religion a significant concern for her. In Queen Mary's era, a total of 227 men and 56 women were put to death. Among them were notable figures such as Bishops Nicholas Ridley, Hugh Latimer, and Thomas Cranmer. When she came to power, numerous Protestant leaders avoided execution by leaving for other parts of Europe. In 1555, during Mary I of England's Second Parliament, the Second Statute of Repeal was enacted. This statute restored the Pope to his role as the head of the Church, thereby removing the monarch from that position. Furthermore, under this act, heresy laws were implemented, making it illegal and subject to punishment to speak against Catholicism. Mary and her advisors believed that the first round of burnings of Protestants would serve as a strong and quick warning to those who had strayed from the true faith to come back. In a memorandum from January 1555, the Queen clarified that executions should be carried out in a way that made it clear to the public that they were not being condemned without good reason. This way, people would understand the truth and be cautious about doing the same thing. However, Mary had significantly underestimated the determination of the Protestants and their readiness to die for their beliefs. These executions, which are the primary reason why she's famously called Bloody Mary, are often used to explain why some people consider her one of the most wicked individuals in history. Some even depict her as a flesh-eating zombie. These executions are what gave the people the image of a ruler whose extreme madness and oppressive rule, as described by a writer from the 16th century named Bartholomew Treheron, led her to be associated with the deaths of many innocent, virtuous, and outstanding individuals. Mary Tudor's historical image was additionally tainted by the surrender of Calais, which represented England's final European territories, to the French while she was in power. Remaining without children, dealing with illness, and mourning, she was additionally saddened by a sequence of pregnancies that turned out to be false alarms. Consequently, She never bore a Catholic heir, and upon her demise, the crown ultimately passed to her Protestant half-sister Elizabeth. Mary passed away at the age of 42 in 1558 during a flu outbreak, although she had been experiencing abdominal pain and might have had uterine or ovarian cancer. Her half-sister Elizabeth took the throne as a Protestant monarch, and England continued to follow the Protestant faith. Despite being infamously known for her persecution of the Protestants and loss of Calais, many people today have started believing in the powerful woman that Mary was. The prevailing view now is that if Mary had lived longer, Catholicism would have continued to be the dominant religion. As William Wiseman puts it, had she lived longer, the Catholic Church would have retained its majority status because most of the nation had converted to and embraced Catholicism. It took Elizabeth many years to phase out Catholicism. What are your final thoughts on Mary so far? Do you think that she was a good queen despite her unpopular decisions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked watching this video, give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, and ring the notification bell. Thanks for watching.